Parliamentary committee exploring the voice referendum has hit the road, taking public hearings to regional communities. Joining me live now is Labor Senator and Chair of this committee, Nita Green. Thanks very much for your time. What can you tell us so far? What are you hearing? I know it's early on, but I'm sure there's some positive. Are there concerns being expressed to you as well?
Well, it's really good to be with you and good to be talking about this parliamentary committee that I'm absolutely honoured to be chairing. We kicked off hearings last week in Canberra, and many of your viewers might have seen those that hearing focus on constitutional legal experts and some of the constitutional issues that people have raised. But we set out pretty early to get out into the community and hear directly from people on the ground, and we had our first community hearing in Orange yesterday. And we'll be holding our second hearing tomorrow right here in Cairns, which I'm incredibly proud to bring this committee home to the beautiful place of far north Queensland. And what we're asking people and talking to people about in those committees about what they think about the legislation to propose a voice into the referendum, what they think about the wording, and does the wording give effect to what they want to see a voice to Parliament do and what it can achieve. So that's the crux of most of the questions. We've got a broad range of committee members and they obviously have their own views and they're obviously trying to get their own things out of it. But so far, I think it's been really positive, and I think most witnesses have really appreciated the respect with which we are carrying ourselves, and we know this is an important committee.
You're chair of this committee. Do you enter these hearings with an entirely open mind that you might, at the end of this, have a different view to what you did at the start, for example, around those legal concerns?
Yeah, look, Tom, I take this role incredibly seriously, as I'm sure all parliamentarians do. When you're placed on a committee, that's an important role. And as chair, it's particularly important that I look at these issues on the face of them. I will say I think there's two separate issues. I think we are tasked at looking at the legislation, particularly in the wording, and there is a lot of discussion about that, and that's what we're looking at. That's what we're asking questions about. I think there's the separate issue about general support for the proposition of a voice and how that might happen. And I'm a supporter of the voice, and I always have been. I think I can do both of those things at the same time. We can diligently scrutinise the legislation. That's what we're tasked to do, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're asking all the right questions so we can get those answers and deliver a report to the Parliament.
So have you sought an assurance from the Prime Minister, though, that if your committee does say, hey, we actually have a concern about the wording and a legal concern about that, we think it does need to be changed, that he would be open to doing that?
That's not something as the chair that I'm going to be doing. I'm not trying to preempt the decisions of the committee. I'm not trying to preempt what our report might say. And I'm certainly not going out there and seeking views on what the committee may or may not decide. What I'm doing is going about the work to make sure that we get the witnesses and the submissions that we need to build a body of evidence to deliver a report that the Parliament can be proud of. What the government or even the opposition does as a result of that report is really a matter for them. I'm a member of the government, but I'm taking this role incredibly seriously, and I'm doing that on an independent basis. And I know there are members of the Liberal Party who are part of our committee who are doing the same thing. What I will say is that, it seems like for Peter Dutton that this committee process is irrelevant and he has preempted the decisions of the committee. That's disappointing, but we'll keep working to get a report out that gives people a really good sense of some of the questions that have been asked and what the answers are to those questions.
And do you or the committee broadly have access to the Solicitor General advice that has been provided to the government on that question of constitutional concerns?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question because the committee at this stage hasn't considered that advice or sought that advice. It might be something that the committee looks at later. What I will say is the Prime Minister, separate from our committee process, has said that the Solicitor General advice will be made clear through the Attorney General, and we'll work as a committee to discuss how we might deal with that advice if it's provided to the public. What we're doing is getting advice from the most preeminent constitutional lawyers in the country, and you would have seen them come to Canberra last week, former High Court judges, former Chief Justice of the High Court and eminent barristers, so that we can really get a sense of some of the constitutional issues not just from one person, but from many people across the range of views.
So, but on that advice though, isn't it crucial that you know it? Because yes, you're getting evidence from some very, well-known, as you say, legal minds, but we've got the advice from the government source, from the Solicitor General on that very question. Don't you need to know what the view of the Solicitor General is and why they think, if indeed they do, there won't be a legal issue, so that then you can test that advice with other legal minds? Isn't that the whole point of a committee? At the moment, you can't test that legal advice because you don't know what it is.
Oh, well, Tom, I assure you, I'm fully aware of what the role of our committee is and what we are responsible to do, and I'm aware of what we're able to do in terms of seeking advice. Sorry. The Solicitor General, it's not the Solicitor General's role to give advice to a committee unless it's asked for. So we'll consider that as a committee. At the moment, we're out in community, we're listening to people on the ground, we're getting the views of people outside of Canberra about what this voice might mean to them and their lives. And I think that's a really important part of this conversation as well.
No, it is, but I'm just asking about this advice that the government's relying on to say they believe this will be change that doesn't spark, major legal challenges. Your committee, wouldn't it be best if you could test that advice?
Well, Tom, as I've said, the committee will seek to understand the issues that are relevant to the inquiry that we are considering. We will consider the advice that we receive. We're not trying to replicate the process that the government has undertaken in seeking advice to government. We're a parliamentary inquiry. We have a remit to go out there and find evidence and give people a chance to make submissions. And I'm sure that at the end of this inquiry, we'll have been given as much evidence and support and advice as possible to be able to make really substantial findings on this matter.
Okay, I'll ask a slightly longer question. If you need to grab a sip of water, do so. So that's why I'm waffling with this one. But let me ask it in one final manner, because you did allude to perhaps getting the Solicitor General advice before. So is that an option for you? Just talk us through how that works. You would request it and it could or might not be provided to you, or are you just waiting to see if it's public and then you'll use the fact it's been published to then use it in the committee? What are we talking about there?
Well, Tom, I'd have to seek some advice from the Clerk of the Parliament in relation to what the best process would be. But, my experience on committees previously is that the Solicitor General doesn't provide advice, doesn't provide a copy of the advice that they've given to government. The one I can remember off the top of my head is being involved in the sports rorts inquiry, and there was no Solicitor General advice provided to the committee in relation to that inquiry. This is advice to government. As a parliamentary inquiry, we can seek documents and there is a process for those documents to be considered. I can assure you that no member of the committee is leaving any stone unturned when it comes to seeking the right evidence and the right support and the right advice. We're doing that, and we're doing it diligently because we know how important this committee is, not only to the Australian people and to the Parliament, but to all of the people who care about a voice to Parliament and want to make sure that it has support from a rigorous process, a diligent parliamentary scrutiny process. So we're working through it. The committee is due to report on the 15th of May. We still have a little bit of time yet. And I really do appreciate people who are giving us that time to go through the motions and to step through the evidence and to seek, views from people all over the country, which is what we'll be doing tomorrow in Cairns.
All right, it's not much time to get the advice and sift through it. We'll see if that happens though. So what about the effectiveness? This is the other big question, whether this actually works. How do you assess that? Is it always going to be somewhat subjective as to whether something like this will work, will do what we're wanting to achieve here as a country, improve outcomes for Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders?
Well, we have to listen to the evidence on the ground, and so that's what we're doing. And yesterday we were in Orange. We were hearing from people who've been working to improve the lives of Indigenous Australians for decades, their whole lives, and we were listening to them about what they think a voice to Parliament can achieve on the ground. And I think it's really important that we listen to people who've been doing this for a long time. And and listen to what the voice proposal would possibly deliver. I certainly think that it's our job as a parliamentary inquiry to ask those questions, but ultimately it's a decision of the Australian people if they want to support the voice at the referendum. And it's a decision for the Australian people about what they think the voice can achieve, but also what the voice would say about our country, about our history, but also about our future. I've always thought that the Voice to Parliament proposal is one that seeks to deliver constitutional recognition, but also structural reform. That will mean that we can be more united as a country and move forward and finally deliver, all the promises that have been made for so many years on closing the gap. That's what I'm really interested in talking to people about after this committee process is finished. Until that time, I'll keep my chair hat on and I won't preempt the decisions of the committee or the report that we're delivering.
Fair enough. Perhaps we'll speak to you once this report has come out and delve into some more of that. Nita Green, thank you for your time.